Great. All right. Kelly's looking forward to this. She wants to learn how to connect and be with her emotions as a manager. Oh, that's so awesome. A better balance between productivity and human needs. And right now we have so many more human needs, I think. And as managers, it's so much more important to be conscious of that and to be tapping into that. Okay. Looks like Diane has a question for you about registration, Ashley.
Yeah, Diane, I'll reach out to you privately so we can get you set up, okay?
Perfect. Welcome, everyone. As you are joining us, we have, oh my gosh, over 117 people online. This is awesome. I'm super excited. I'm Jahnavi Brenner. I am based in Boulder, Colorado, and I'm so excited to have you here today. Please find that chat box and let us know what you wanted to learn about emotional intelligence today. We are going to be using that chat box. So if you don't get in there now, we're gonna have a delay later. So please find that box, know how to use it. Just type in a hi, tell us a little bit about what you want to learn. Be intentional. You have set aside the next 76 minutes to focus on this topic. Let's see what you want to learn. Let's be intentional with our time and focused with your learning objectives today. So excited to have all of you on the call today. Thanks, Annette. Wonderful to see you as well. And I'm kind of scrolling. If your video's on, that's awesome. I love seeing people with video, so don't be shy because I got my video on. So, but if you don't want to, that's cool too. But you better find the chat box because we need you in that chat box for sure. We're also going to be doing polls, so feel free to, get ready to do polls as well. Great. Molly's looking forward to learning about using EI when dealing with conflict. Awesome. Catherine acknowledges she doesn't know what she doesn't know. Love it. And she's interested in learning. Michelle is looking forward to learning another tool in customer service and helping students. And emotional intelligence is so important in working with customers, clients, etc. How to gauge where our students are socially and emotionally through Zoom in our virtual world. Andrea joined so that she could learn how to support her team. Welcome, Andrea. Welcome, everyone. Beth is wanting to improve her teaching. Lots of teachers here today. Awesome. Employee wellness program. How can we help our student workers? Such a great idea. I love it. So I hope you'll all walk away with some really practical tips and tools to apply on emotional intelligence. Audio's cutting out. Okay, I think it might be my hair. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put my hair back and see if that works better. Audio is not cutting out. Okay, all right. Audio's fine. Thanks. Wow.
It was working for me. It could be personal, like Wi-Fi networks and stuff that people are on. So definitely check your network. And just so you know, if anybody misses a piece, we are recording this. So I will make sure that everyone has the link afterwards in case they miss anything, if they have to log out and get back in and everything there. So yeah, and calling into the meetings, not using the computer audio makes audio more consistent. So if you have any issues there, feel free to try that. So chat box, again, if anyone's missing it, it should be on your bottom toolbar link if you're on a desktop, but check out the chat, make sure you have access to it. As Jahnavi said, we will also be doing some polls. I know that if not everybody is actually like signed in and using it as a sign-in, you might not be able to see the poll pop up for you, but we will make sure we read it out and you can answer in the chat as well.
Perfect. Great. Ashley, you think we should jump in, get started?
Let's do it. Awesome.
Okay, all right. All right. Welcome, everyone. I am Jahnavi Brenner, and I'm so excited to host you today to kick off a 5-session series on emotional intelligence. So I am Well, I'll tell you a little bit about myself in a little bit. Let's dive into some logistics. So as Ashley mentioned, we're going to be using the Zoom features. We're going to be using the polls in the chat, not the Q&A. So if you have any questions or have any needs, make sure you're using that chat box, and you can find Ashley as the host and send her a private message. If you miss something, ask your pals on the call. There's 186 of you here, so let's help each other out and make sure that we're all having the learning experience we want to have. Your audio has been muted, and just confirm that to help us all have a really good learning experience. And please put in your comments and responses in the chat box. And yes, we are recording this session, so you will absolutely get a recording. You will also get a handout, which has the key points and the references, links, etc., to the resources that I talk about in the session today. So if you are worried you don't have to do screen captures of every slide, the key things are going to be in the handout that you get emailed after this. All right, so let's get started. Let me start with telling you a little bit about myself. I'm Jahnavi Brenner. I'm a certified leadership coach and talent and culture consultant. I've spent about 25 years in corporate environments in R&D, in sales, and HR. Often my colleagues are surprised to find out that their HR counterpart has a bachelor's in chemical engineering. You know, who really knows what they're going to do and what they're going to be great at when they're 18 years old? I certainly didn't. And so I pursued engineering and then wound my way through careers in sales and HR into my current role, where I have a firm called The Vivid Leader. And what I do is I create workplaces where leaders lead with confidence and ease, and all employees can do their best work. So I do leadership coaching, mostly one-on-one, although I'm also developing some group offerings, as well as consulting in employee engagement, diversity, equity, and inclusion, talent development, team effectiveness, and more. I'm also certified in the emotional intelligence, an emotional intelligence assessment, the EQI 2.0, which is an emotional intelligence framework and assessment that I'll tell you a little bit more about later. So I'm super excited to be here. I know Ashley because we recently went through our coaching training together with IPEC, and you know, we met probably a bit over a year ago and quickly became friends. And you know, I love working with her, so it's a pleasure to be with you today, and all the folks at Pikes Peak Community College. So I'm excited. All right. So here's what's on our agenda today. We're going to talk a little bit about why emotional intelligence matters, especially now. What is emotional intelligence? And then finally, we're going to do some exercises to build your emotional intelligence skills. I would love for you to walk out of this workshop with a new skill, with a new insight that's going to support you in building your emotional intelligence. So that's my goal for today, is to make sure you're walking out with some actionable steps, tools to take and apply this afternoon, maybe this evening, etc., with your coworkers, with your family, maybe just with yourself, as you monitor your reaction to things that are happening in your day. So that's our agenda today. So as we get started, let's jump in with a poll. So Ashley, can you throw that poll up for us? You know, whenever I want to learn something, I always want to think about, why does it matter, right? And so my question to you is about emotional intelligence and why it matters. So the question is, how much does emotional intelligence account for our professional job success? So when we're in a professional job, like all of you here today, how much do you think emotional intelligence matters? 5 to 10%, 10 to 20%, 20 to, we got a little bit of a typo there, 20 to 45%, or 60 to 70%, or 65 to 70%. Coral's typing in the chat. She believes emotional intelligence is more important than IQ, and I will completely agree with you, Coral. So hopefully that helps people pick a choice here in our poll. Ashley, you'll tell me when we've got a lot of responses here.
Yep, they're still rolling in. Votes are coming in. We got a couple people in the chat as well who might not be seeing that poll. But...
Nice. C and D. Thank you, folks. Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Wonderful.
All right, we're going to close this poll up. We got 174, 175.
Wonderful.
Check
All right, what are our results? Okay, all right. So most of you think that emotional intelligence accounts for 65 to 70% of our professional job success. Well, I would love to agree with you. It's a little bit less. So I hope you're not going to all hang up because it's not enough. But emotional intelligence accounts for 20 to 45% of our job success. So it's somewhere in the middle of C, 20 to 60%. Crazy, isn't it? Like, learning about your emotions, learning how to handle your emotions can matter more than learning some new software, can matter more than learning how to, the tactics of running a project. Our emotions are so important. And someone had mentioned that emotional intelligence is more important than cognitive intelligence, which is what we typically call IQ, in predicting career success. Absolutely. Daniel Goleman said that back in 1995. So, 25 years ago, we were learning about the impact of emotional intelligence in the workplace. So let's kind of go into the whys behind that. Okay, so it matters a lot. I hope you guys aren't hanging up now because you're like, oh, it's not 70%, but it matters a lot. So let's figure out why this matters. So just a few short months ago, this is kind of what our workplace looked like. How many of you have been in some sort of experience like this? We might look at those people and go, oh my goodness, they're so close to each other and they're breathing on each other. Oh my horrors, right? And we used to go to meetings. We used to go to work. We used to go into buildings with people, other people. We used to go in the hallway. We used to go to meetings like this, contribute to conversations, have dialogue, answer questions, ask questions, right? All of this was happening for us. Well, what this picture is showing us, even though today it looks very different, is that work is done in teams and groups, right? It's very rare that any of your work is something that you alone work on and then you hand to an end customer of your work. Typically, you're collaborating with a colleague. Maybe you do some work and you hand it off to someone else, and then they have to do something to it, and then they hand it off to someone else. All of those things are happening to us in the workplace because in our economy, work is getting done at the intersection of people, right? And we are all people, we're all humans, and we are emotional beings. And this is why emotional intelligence matters so much, because we need to be able to work with each other. So if we are an individual contributor, sometimes we work with colleagues to collaborate, we work with colleagues to hand our work over. If we're managing a team, if we're leaders, teachers, leaders of people at work, we have to create climates for our students. We have to create climates for our team workers so that they can contribute their best work to the workplace. And managing emotions is just as important. And being able to recognize emotions in the workplace is really important too. So, I am a chemical engineer by training, and so like a scientist, I don't know how many of you identify as a scientist. Feel free to drop that in the chat if you do. And scientists are really focused on data. Right? And, we always think about data and we look at numbers and we look at all this research and all these other things and we conduct experiments. Emotional intelligence and being able to recognize emotions, it's another source of data. So why would we overlook valuable data that could help us understand what's going on, could help us understand what the right next step is and, what decision to make and how to proceed. So emotions are data, and I argue that sometimes they are data that helps us predict what's going to happen versus an outcome of what is going to happen. So some people talk about lagging indicators and leading indicators in the workplace when they think about data, like sales and revenue and customer turnover and all that kind of stuff. And I think emotions are actually a leading indicator of outcomes. So I'm not getting my PhD soon on that topic, but I think I'm really curious about it, and I'm interested in learning more and kind of fleshing that out a little bit further. So awesome. So I hope that you kind of agree. And today, this is what our workplace looks like. This is me back in June. I was in a 3-day training online with about 20 other people from across the country, all sitting online for 3 days to learn about another tool that I got certified in. And when we're working remotely, it's so much harder, right? It's so much harder to understand the nuances. It's harder to get meaning. It's hard to connect with other people and pick up on their emotional response. So that means to me that we need to do even better at strengthening our emotional intelligence skills. We need to be more intentional. We need to work harder at this because it matters so much more. So I hope I've made the case for you on why emotional intelligence matters. And if I have, just type in the chat, yep, I got it and I'm in. Zoom fatigue is real. Yes, absolutely, Ruth. Totally agree. It is really hard. And sometimes I find actually doing a phone call might be better because I'm just listening so carefully to the words and so carefully to the tone and to the pauses. And I try to just pay attention to that versus taking in all the visual input as well. Awesome. A lot of folks are with me. This is great. Okay. So what is emotional intelligence? So some might think that emotional intelligence is the opposite of intelligence, but it's not. In fact, David Caruso, who's one of the early researchers of emotional intelligence, says that it's not the triumph of head over heart, it's actually the intersection of both. So emotional intelligence is the intersection of head and heart. Okay, so you can see a lot of different models on emotional intelligence, but really it's a set of social and emotional skills that help us understand how we perceive and express ourselves, develop and maintain social relationships, cope with challenges, and use emotional information in an effective and meaningful way. So this is the last piece is what I think about the data thing, right? Like how do we use emotional information in an effective, meaningful way? So these are all the sets of skills, right? The categories of skills that emotional intelligence covers. So let's do a quick poll here and figure out what's your area of interest. Which area or areas of emotional intelligence would you like to grow? So feel free to choose in the chat. Is it how you are, your self-awareness and your self-expression? Actually, I'm just noticing I might have given you some wrong data there on the polls. Apologies, but it's close enough. So perceive and express yourself is A. Developing and maintaining social relationships is B. Coping with challenges is C. Using emotional information in decision-making is D. So yeah, I feel like our challenges are changing all the time. Please use that poll and tell us what you want to learn about, where you'd like to grow. This is about setting your intention. Getting a couple votes for C in the chat. Coping with challenges. Every day, every week brings us a new challenge, it seems, with COVID and school and work and all the things that are happening. Yeah. Christina admits that she picked one, but there's several that she wants to grow in. Well, good. I'm hoping this series will be really valuable for you. How are we doing, Ashley?
All right. Kind of stalled at 180, so I'm going to share the results out.
Okay, wonderful. Coping with challenges. So that's really interesting. I think today we're going to dive into that a little bit as we think about our emotions and how they show up, and especially in challenging situations. So thank you so much for this. And actually, this might be something we capture and keep to inform kind of the rest of the series. So if you can take a note of that, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I will.
Okay, perfect. Great. Okay, so I want to give you a brief history lesson in one slide. And, I don't want to bore you with all the details of emotional intelligence, but it's crazy because it goes back to Darwin. So that's what I think is so cool, is that this stuff goes back to 1870 when Charles Darwin mentioned the term emotional intelligence. So like this has been around for a long time. It's crazy how long it's been around. Then in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, social intelligence was identified by E.L. Thorndike in 1930, and then in 1940, a researcher said that effective components of intelligence may be essential to success in life. And then in 1950s, some of you may know Maslow, Abraham Maslow, who's a humanistic psychologist. He described how people can build their emotional intelligence. So this is the piece about, I can grow these skills. These skills can be developed and grown. And then kind of in the 80s, some assessments were developed, and the late 80s, two psychologists came together and put together a theory of intelligence on emotions. And the first paper was published back in 1990. And then in 1995, it's really where Daniel Goleman kind of brought this to the business world. It was on the cover of like Time Magazine and Newsweek and all of those kind of magazines with publications that used to be really popular in the 90s and 80s. And he was the one who asserted that EI is more important than IQ. And his quote was, "We are being judged by a new yardstick, not just how smart we are or by our training and expertise, but also how well we handle ourselves and each other." So pretty crazy that that is now the measure of our skills and our yardstick that we're using. And then a few books were generated in the 2000s. Primal Leadership, interesting book, and Harvard Business Review has a really wonderful article that's a great synopsis. So you don't have to read the whole book. And the key point and the premise in this book is that a leader's emotional impact on an organization has significant effect. So emotional intelligence is carried through the organization like electricity through wires, and that a leader's mood is contagious. It spreads quickly throughout the business or organization, impacting the mood and consequently the performance of everyone in the organization. Therefore, it's critical for leaders to develop their emotional skills, right? Their emotional leadership skills. And, you know, we've all been there, right? You've been in this like kind of maybe a toxic work environment where the leader was a little, you know, not fully in control of their emotions, or perhaps a really highly emotionally intelligent leader where lots of views were accepted, you know, challenging situations were handled with grace and composure, right? So we've been in those situations and we understand that. So those of us that are leaders on the call, let's take note of that and really be intentional about focusing on our leadership skills in this area. And then finally, in 2005, there's a book called Resonant Leadership, where they, Boivadas and McKee he's a pretty famous leadership coach, and this is Annie McKee, who has the How to Be Happy at Work, and she's got a lot of great research out there about happiness at work. They talked about the key concepts to improve a leader's effectiveness are mindfulness, hope, and compassion. Like crazy, it's not strategic planning or defining a vision or, you know, all those kinds of things, leading change, right? It's mindfulness, hope, and compassion. So these are all skills that are in that box of emotional intelligence. So really, really interesting that this is, you know, this is where the research is going. And right now, when I read articles about leadership, most of the articles are talking about empathy. And how do leaders develop empathy? Because our employees, our coworkers, our colleagues are going through a lot. And what they're going through is changing on a daily or weekly basis. You know, last week in our household, we had a transition where our 8-year-old went back to in-person school. She's 8, but she's got like the emotions, I don't know, like of a full-blown teenager. And, you know, there was a lot going on in our house that week. And it was tough, you know, and we know it's better for her because she's an only child. We want her to go back and be socializing with other people. Yet there was a lot to deal with, both on her side, on my side, my husband's side, and how do we manage all the logistics, as well as the emotions that were brewing up for her about the transition and the change. So very interesting that this is kind of impacting us in so many areas, and really leadership research and leadership writings and, you know, kind of attention right now in that space of leadership development is going towards this area. So it continues, right? So we'll see even more, as I just mentioned, right, about what's happening right now for our organization. So the components of social intelligence are quite simple. You know, there's a bunch of different models out there. You can find them all with different Google searches, but there's really 4 or 5 main components of emotional intelligence. 2 of them are about ourselves, self-awareness and self-management. And 2 of them are about others, social awareness and relationship management. And so, you know, I just think it's so fascinating that we can be better at something by focusing on ourselves. Like, when's the last time you were learning about something and it was like, oh, don't worry about reading this book or doing this tutorial, just learn about yourself and you'll get better. Like, I think that's crazy. And I love that about emotional intelligence. So that is one of the things I love, is that the more time you spend understanding yourself, the better you're going to be at this. So, you know, I don't know. If you think that's pretty darn cool, type in the chat. Tell me that you think it's pretty darn cool that you don't have to read a book. You don't have to, you know, take a class or a tutorial. You can spend time focusing on yourself and get better at emotional intelligence. Awesome. Loving that. Fabulous. Okay. So here's the other thing I love about emotional intelligence, is that we can grow our skills. Our emotional intelligence is actually not fixed, which is very unlike our IQ. In fact, EQ, emotional intelligence, emotional quotient, grows with age. Oh my God, here's something that gets better as I get older? Like, who thinks that's pretty darn cool, right? Type in the chat if you think that is amazing. As I get older, I'm going to get better at emotional intelligence. Well, it's true. Our emotional intelligence peaks in our 40s. So sorry if you're over your late 40s, which I'm nearing, might be a little bit tough. But really the reason is that we go through more experience in life. And then we become more experienced at handling our emotions. We become more seasoned. You know, we've seen it before, right? Like, you know, I'm dealing with my 8-year-old who's experienced some drama with her friend the first time. And I'm like, yeah, been there, honey. You know, I've been there a few times, right? So exactly like a fine wine. I love it. Perfect. Yes. And I think it's so wonderful that to know that we can grow and that we can improve. And the other thing that I love about this is that if you focus on one skill in emotional intelligence and you make an intention and you start putting your attention there and start practicing and growing and learning, you will see impacts on other skills. So when's the last time you went to the gym and you're doing an exercise for your quads and your biceps just started becoming amazing? Like, that doesn't happen, right? So this is going to happen for you in emotional intelligence, which I think is also pretty darn fabulous. So you can focus on one skill and you will see an impact and growth in other areas. So if you like that, type that in the chat because, you know, I don't know. I feel like this is like a wonderful workout. You know, I just joined Orange Theory back in February and that's a tough workout, but, you know, I'm still kind of debating, am I going to go back with all this COVID stuff? So I think it's kind of it's great when we can have exercises that help us. Yes, totally like cross training. Love it. Awesome. Okay. All right. So the other thing I want to share with you is that our skills often adapt and get stronger based on the environments we're in. So the role you're in today, or the roles you've had in your career, they might require different skills in emotional intelligence. So over on the left, we have a picture of workers on a construction site. So, you know, think about a construction site. There's like danger all around the place, right, on every corner. And that, you know, it requires some independence. You know, you've got to be able to do your task individually. You've got to be able to do your task in a cooperative environment as well. And so these workers might need some assertiveness, they might need some interpersonal relationship skills, they might need to have independent skills as well. And then over on the right, I've got a picture of like, you know, a headset for a call center employee. You know, think about calling T-Mobile or AT&T or maybe even Comcast because we're challenged with our phone service or internet service. Those people on that line need really high empathy. They need really high flexibility to be able to deal with us with all of our emotions, right? So, you know, it's so interesting that different workers might need different skills and that different environments might need us to cultivate different skills. So I think some of you might relate to this because you're thinking about how to adapt that. Like, you know, your current job, your current role might require different EI skills than your past one. So, you know, how many of you are experiencing that your current role is requiring different skills? You could just drop that in the chat. What are the skills that your current role are asking for? That would be great. I see a little help there. Linda, someone asked a question about how do you help someone who's not aware, and Linda suggested reframing it to encourage someone to be more aware. Yep. People need patience, leading from behind, attention to detail, influence, teamwork. Yeah, empathy and connection. Yeah, adaptability. Yes, flexibility. Leadership, decision making. Wonderful. Okay, awesome. Well, we're going to be working on some of that today. So this is good. Really, really exciting. And you know, when we take on a new role, it's really good to ask, right? To ask the manager of the job or to ask the colleagues in the job, what do you think the skills are that are needed for someone to be successful in this role? And then you get the list from them, right? And then you can kind of think about where am I on that, on a scale of 1 to 10 on that scale, and you know, what do I need to do to improve or to get better at flexing that muscle? All right, so what I'd like to share with you now is a framework. This is the EQI framework. It's the EQI, as I mentioned, is an assessment in emotional intelligence, and they have divided emotional intelligence into 5 components with 3 skills in each component. So as you see this visual, I would love for you to just jot down for yourself, what are 1 or 2 areas that you want to focus on in building your emotional intelligence? So maybe it's in self-perception. Maybe you have self-regard that is too low. Maybe you don't think that you are able to accomplish or to achieve success in your job or accomplish a task in front of you. Maybe your self-regard is too high and that you may have been called out as being boastful. Maybe it's emotional self-awareness. You might be someone who's highly emotionally aware, or you might be someone who's not emotionally self-aware. Maybe your learning opportunity is in flexibility or stress tolerance, right? You know, as I mentioned, our lives are changing kind of constantly. And, you know, our ability to be resilient is connected to our ability to be flexible, to maintain optimism about the situation. So take a note of this, and this will be in your handout as well, this graphic, but I'd love for you to just jot a note, because my guess is you're going to end today and you're going to be curious about more on emotional intelligence, and you're going to want to Google something. And so I'd love for you to Google what you really, really care about and to do it with intention, so that maybe you'll read one article and you'll walk away with another amazing tool or another amazing tip that you can apply. So we're committed to 5 sessions for Pikes Peak Community College, and there are plenty of resources out there beyond the 5 sessions that I'm going to be delivering. So I want you to be able to kind of take action on your own. And thanks for putting that in the chat. Okay, awesome. We got a question about reality testing. Thank you for that question. So reality testing is the ability to kind of see the situation for what it really is versus maybe too optimistic or too negative, you know, kind of like, oh, this is never going to work, or, oh yeah, it'll totally work, right? So reality testing is kind of being able to perceive, thank you, PPCC and 12 Elder Community Colleges. Sorry, thanks, woohoo, Pueblo, representing, I appreciate it, thank you. So reality testing is about the ability to kind of see the situation for what it really, really is without kind of, you know, over dramatizing it one end or the other. Hopefully that helps. Community College of Denver, awesome. Yes, well, that's awesome. Let's just put that in the chat. I love to see all these people all over Colorado with us today. That's awesome. Thank you. Great. Okay. So hopefully everyone's got, yes, Front Range Community College. This is awesome. Red Rocks Community College, CCD, awesome. Terra Junior College. Oh my God, I'm learning so much about the education system in Colorado. Thank you. This is great. Awesome. Okay. So hopefully all of you have 1 or 2, or maybe even 3 or 4 skills in emotional intelligence that you want to set an intention for your learning. And given our limited time today, we're going to take a deep dive in 2 of these 15 skills. Specifically, we're going to take a focus in one skill in self-perception, which is called emotional self-awareness. And then the other skill we're going to work on is in self-expression, assertiveness. And we actually got a few questions on this in the registration process. So I'm excited to dive into the content today. So, all right, how are we doing here? We're about halfway through. Are we doing pretty well here, Ashley? Everything going okay? You're setting questions that I missed come up?
No, sounds great. You touched onto the reality testing, and I think we're rolling through.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Thank you all for using the chat. So much more fun than, like, you know, staring at a blank screen. And I wish I could do this live in front of you all, but honestly, I don't think we could have done this in the same room, right? And had all these people together. So thanks to COVID, right? We have some wonderful things that are coming in our lives. We're all coming together today. So, okay, so as I mentioned, we're going to take a deeper dive in emotional self-awareness and assertiveness. So let's start with emotional self-awareness. We're going to do an exercise. Okay, so now you have to find that chat box. If you've been holding back and not finding it, I need you to be able to find the chat box. And you are absolutely going to get a recording of this session, Walt. So I don't know if the audio is going to be separate. Ashley, you're in charge of that one.
There is a way to do just the audio, but I'll send that out afterwards for everybody.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Okay, so everyone find that chat box. We're going to do an exercise, and what we're going to do is I am going to describe a scenario to you, and it has 4 scenes. So picture yourself as the main character in the scenario, okay? And I need you to use the chat box to tell me about the emotions you're experiencing in each scene. So what you're going to do is you're going to type 1 for scene 1, and then you're going to just type in the emotion you experience. And I'm going to describe the situation. And what I could even encourage you to do is close your eyes if you're comfortable with that. So just close your eyes and just listen to what I say, and then feel an emotion in you that comes up, because you're going to be the main character. And type that emotion in the chat. And then once you do that, take a look and see what all your pals are typing in, because everyone is going to experience a different emotion based on what I'm describing, perhaps. And that's totally fine, because we can all sometimes experience different situations differently. And it's really a wonderful experience to be able to see how others are experiencing it, right? And contrast that to yours. So I want you to close your eyes if you want to, listen, type in your answer, and then once you type in your answer, open your eyes and read what everyone does. Okay, everyone clear with that? Give me a little quick nod if you're on video. Perfect, thank you, Diane, appreciate that. Okay, awesome. So here we go, okay? You've been working on a presentation for a specific deadline for your manager. It's a project you're really excited about. You're able to share some knowledge you have from a different assignment and build on it for the whole organization that's gonna go in like a new direction. It's pretty darn exciting. You're gonna forge some new ground. The deadline is 2 weeks out for that presentation. And on that day, you're going to be presenting to your manager, her manager, and then some of the peers of your manager's manager. Does that make sense? It's like 2 levels up in leadership. These are the big wigs. These are the big shots. They're all going to be there, okay? And you're presenting. You've got a pretty good outline of the presentation. You're working with your colleagues. It's coming together, and some external experts. You're doing some research, and you're filling in the details now. Tell me how you're feeling in the chat. Tell me what your emotions. Put a 1 and type in your emotions. Anxiety, confident, anxious, proud, excited, nervous, stressed, excited, pressured, energized, focused. Yeah, like look at that. Isn't that crazy? We're seeing like, I'm excited, I'm nervous, I'm grateful, I'm calm, I'm satisfied. Yes, this range of emotions. Thank you. This is awesome. The chat is blowing up. I love it. Woohoo! Productive satisfaction. Okay, hesitant. All right, we're continuing with our scenario. Now, you get an IM from your manager, instant message, Teams, chat, that kind of thing. And your manager tells you the meeting date has changed. You're going to need to do your presentation in just a few days. So it's not 2 weeks out anymore. It's been moved closer. It's earlier. As you check the date he gives you against, or she gives you against the calendar, you realize, crap, this presentation is on Monday. Tell me how you're feeling in the chat. Stressed, anxious, overwhelmed, pressure cooker, freaking out, dread, scared. There goes my weekend. Oh, overwhelmed, focused, uh-oh, motivated, nauseous, hurried, stressed, still excited, pressed and angry, ready to be ready, abused. Why me? Oh, adrenaline rush, mad, annoyed. Yes, okay, awesome. Okay. Let's go to scene 3. As you reflect on the status of the presentation, you realize there's a lot to do, and you likely have to work over the weekend. You've done that before, but now as you check your calendar, you've realized that you have a jam-packed social calendar. Yes, even during COVID times. How could that even be happening, right? Well, it's Halloween. You had planned to get together with some friends for dinner. You were then going to get together with family on Sunday to celebrate a birthday. Friday, you were planning to take the day off and go shopping. And you were going to spend some time on Saturday making a cake and getting decorations for the party on Sunday. So how do you feel now? Yes, type in the chat, scene 3, how do you feel? No sleep for me, disappointed, frustrated, conflicted, tired, furious, irritated, mad, sleep deprived, anxious, over the top. Oh man, and where were we in scene 1? We were like so excited, right? And now we're stressed, we're deflated, resigned, mad, bummer. But wait, there's more. Later in the day, you get a call from a colleague who looks like he's on the streets of Rome on vacation or something. And for some reason, your presentation comes up and you share that you're likely to forego some of your weekend and vacation plans to get it done for that rescheduled date. And your team member says, oh, you just found out? They rescheduled that meeting a week ago. Type in the chat, how do you feel? Are you kidding me? Yes. Pissed, annoyed, angry, yes. Agitated, abused, resentful, mad, irritated, upset, yeah. Super, concerned, yep. Frustrated, exactly. So the purpose of looking for a new job, oh man, woof, we got to the end of the rope on that one pretty fast. Left out, disbelief. Exactly. So this scenario, right? And all of this happens like in the span of a day, right? And one project, just, an interaction with our manager, and then kind of a checking of our calendar, and then an interaction with our coworker. And so what I mean to do with this is really illustrate the types of emotions we can feel, how quickly they can change, and how intensely we can feel them. So emotional self-awareness is about being aware of the emotions you're experiencing and the intensity of them. So let's dive in a little bit further. And what I have for you here on the screen, let down, disappointed. Thank you so much. This is awesome. I love this chat. You guys are so participative. I love it. Thank you. Okay, so here we go. So if you're a skeptic and you're probably asking, well, what do we really need to know about emotions and feelings and why, right? And what I'm sharing with you right now is a copy of a feelings wheel. And the reason I put this up here is because it's crazy how many feelings there are. Like, I didn't do the math, but I'm going to do it right now. It's about 7 times 7. There's like 50 feelings on this feelings wheel, right? So there's a lot of feelings that we can feel. And often we identify our feelings just with what's at the core. And we want to be able to accurately identify our feelings so that we can understand the root cause of those feelings. And I'll show you later kind of what our feelings are connected to. But when you get to the core of the feeling, you kind of get to the accuracy and the outer rings of this feelings wheel, we can then figure out what's going on inside ourselves. And when we can do that for ourselves, we can actually start to do it for others too, which helps us relate to others and support them appropriately. So this is a copy of a feelings wheel, as I mentioned. There's several different versions out there, and they can be found with a simple search. And psychologists are super familiar with this. And they tend to illustrate, just regardless of the version you find, they tend to illustrate a few key things. Often we start with our feeling in the center. So I feel bad, I feel surprised, I feel angry. Okay, and the further outward we go in the wheel, the more explicit and descriptive and accurately our feeling will get labeled. So as you think about that exercise we just did, do you see how you might have felt surprised and then shocked and then sad and perhaps grief about giving up your weekend plans, and then angry and frustrated and annoyed, right, and disrespected and maybe even resentful towards your manager when you find out your manager already knew of the schedule change well before you were informed? So these are all different feelings that might require different actions from the manager to make amends, right? Acknowledgement, we always start with acknowledgement, but then there might be a different action that the manager needs to take in order to kind of fully support the employee. So Brene Brown, some of you may be familiar. If you're familiar with Brene Brown, type it in the chat because we got to make sure people know about her. She is a research professor at UT Austin who has spent her career studying courage. Yeah, lots of support for Renee. She studies courage, vulnerability, shame, and empathy. And she has published a wonderful book called Daring Leadership, which brings the concepts of courage, vulnerability, shame, and empathy to leadership. You're like, boom, why would that even happen? She brings them together so beautifully. Okay, and one of her tenets is that as a leader, we need to operate with empathy towards others. And empathy is another EI skill. And empathy means you show up to the other person, you understand how they feel, and you normalize their feeling in the situation. You don't try to fix it, you don't try to minimize it, or you don't try to make it bigger than the way the person is experiencing it. And so, for example, you would, let's say your friend calls you. Thank you, Lori, for typing that in the chat. Awesome. I love the way you help each other out. It's so good. So let's say your friend called you and says, this happened to me. This whole scenario with my boss happened to me. And your friend is telling you, and they're giving up on the weekend and they're all that stuff. And what you would do with someone who has empathy is to show up to your friend and say, wow, I can understand why you're feeling the way you're feeling. And you don't say, oh my God, that sucks. Your manager is such a loser. You should quit your job tomorrow. You don't kind of go off the deep end for your friend, right? You don't take it too far, and you don't try to minimize it by saying things like, well, you can have dinner with your family another day, or, it's not that big deal to miss the birthday party, right? So you don't want to minimize it, and you don't want to maximize it too much. And So really, it's about focusing on just meeting someone where they are and normalizing them. So you're like, it makes sense you would feel that way. Gosh, I can understand why you feel this way. And so to be empathetic, you really require emotional literacy, right? You've got to be able to understand the feeling that people are going through. And so Brene Brown calls out the need to understand a minimum of 30 emotions. So this wheel here will be in your handout, and you can also Google it. It has 50 emotions on it, 49 emotions on it. So you want to be able to understand what people typically feel, where they feel that physically in their body, and what they think, and what they're doing, what are their actions as a result of each emotion. So, all right, we're getting a question about the 4 elements. Not sure what 4 pieces people are looking for. All right, awesome. Well, hopefully someone will clarify the question and we'll get that answered. Awesome. Okay, so feelings wheel, awesome. Okay, so how feelings impact us. So why should we be aware of the emotions we feel? Because our emotions control our actions. So how many of you knew that emotions control your actions? Often people think our thoughts control our actions, but that's not the whole picture. Our thoughts impact our emotions, which then impact our actions, okay? So we're gonna go through this circle with with a little bit of a scenario, okay? And this is actually where I spent a ton of time with my leadership coaching clients. Like seriously, we spend a ton of time on this. So go away with this one because it will change your life. And I don't mean that facetiously, and I don't mean that to be in a braggart way, but like when I learned this stuff, it blew up my head. And I was so excited because I was able to put it to use right away. So hopefully you're taking that away without, I don't want you to think I'm a braggart, but I just love this content. So, and I think it's really powerful. So, okay. So often my clients have an emotional response to something in their life. So let's take an example where they're feeling scared about an upcoming project that has been assigned to them. So, you know, they're at work, their boss says, hey, I want you to do blah, 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 right? And they're feeling scared. So what I typically do is ask them, well, what is the emotion causing them to do, right? So they're feeling scared, and then type in the chat, tell me what kind of action you would take if you got scared about something. Rose asked a little bit about emotion and feeling. I kind of use them interchangeably. I think psychologists would probably have a real strict definition. So maybe for a follow-up, Ashley, can you take a note that I'll Google that and share something in the document? Thanks. All right, procrastinate, freeze, withdraw, take a deep breath, retreat emotionally, procrastinate, shut down, hide. Yeah, when we are scared, often we retreat, we pull back and procrastinate, exactly. So then what's the thought that's making them think I'm scared? You know, what do you think that thought could be? You know, what's the thought you might have of that would create a feeling of scared? If your boss came to you, I can't do it, I will fail, and I'm not good enough. I don't want to fail. I've had past failures. Exactly, right? So here's my client thinking, I'm not good enough. I'm scared. And then they're not doing the thing their boss asked them to do. Well, no crap. They're going to probably have a hard time doing well at it because they're not doing it yet, right? They're not starting the project. They're holding back. They're sitting on the couch under a really warm, fuzzy blanket with a heating pad instead of getting the work done. And so, exactly. So that's a totally tough place to be. And it's not a place that's going to enable you to perform your best on your project, right? So then I ask my clients, well, what's a new thought that you could have about this project that'll help you get better results? So let's all kind of put ourselves in the shoes of that client. What's a new thought you could have about this project that'll help you get better results? Curiosity, it's a great opportunity. Yeah, this is my chance to show my skills. I can do it. I love new challenges. I like to grow. I'm optimistic. Exactly. So, you know, I kind of put that together in this purple font here. I'm pretty good at this and I can get help for others. Exactly. It's okay to ask for help. Yep, I can learn, right? So when we're thinking that about a project we just got assigned, wow, this is an opportunity for me to showcase my skills. I can also get help if I need it. How do we feel? Type that in the chat. How do you feel? This is a good challenge. Exactly. We might feel empowered. We might feel psyched, invigorated, proud, determined, excited, confident. Exactly. And then what are our actions when we feel that way? What do we do about the project? We do great work. We lean into it. We dive in. We work hard. We get it done. Yes, exactly. We take action. We get to work. We be creative. We ask for help. We just start firing on all of our cylinders. And it's so amazing because all of our brilliance is coming to the table and it's coming out in this project. So exactly. So here's the thing. Our thoughts connect to our feelings / emotions in Jahnavi's language, which then create our actions. Okay. If you want a different outcome, try a new feeling and a new thought. So how many of you have a situation where you can apply this? Just type in the chat, yes, if you have a situation. If you want to put the words of the situation in there, please do that. Linda's saying it's a little familiar to ABC therapy. I'm not familiar with that, but that's something I want to take a note of and do some research. Awesome. So what I would love for you to do is jot down on a piece of paper really quick, thoughts, feelings, action, and draw a circle around it and write down your situation on a piece of paper. And I want you to take 10 minutes later today to think about what are the thoughts, feelings, and actions you're having, and then what's a new thought that you can try on for this situation. So take a minute or so to jot that down. Okay. All right, I've got a couple other exercises for you to try on emotional self-awareness. So I honestly think emotional self-awareness is absolutely the foundation. Like, if nothing else, if you start practicing emotional self-awareness skills, you will, again, see changes in all of your other EI areas. And it's very hard to grow EI skills in other places without emotional self-awareness, because we start with kind of understanding. So here's some exercises. I want you to be able to observe your feelings and not judge them. So often we might feel angry and then we kind of judge ourselves and go, oh, well, I shouldn't feel angry. Like, that's not okay. She's just my 8-year-old. I shouldn't be angry at her, right? I shouldn't feel angry because, you know, she did the thing wrong. And I want you to refrain from judging your feelings. Just let yourself experience it, okay? And right now, we are experiencing so many different changes, separations from our friends, our family, our coworkers. Our kids are at home, or our kids are at school when they typically would be at home or at school. Whatever the situation is, it's been disrupted. Our vacations have been canceled or changed. We're Zooming to do weddings right now. You know, like, it's crazy what's happening to all of us. And we have a lot of emotions about that. And let's get really specific about what emotion we're feeling. I'm not just angry. I'm feeling shocked. I'm feeling resentful. I'm feeling etc. Get specific, use that feeling wheel and get to the outer edge of the wheel, and then simply observe it and let yourself feel it and accept it and kind of bring it in. Often we try to shove our emotions in the corner or in a closet, and like, I have a closet over there, so that's why I look over there in my office, and we try to shove in the closet, but they just keep sneaking out, and we've got to be careful because they keep sneaking out. So if we stop trying to shove them in a closet and we just embrace them and let ourselves feel them and experience them, we then can move forward. You know, we can't move forward from a place of denial. We have to move forward from a place of acceptance. So accepting the fact that you're feeling that emotion and then saying, okay, what's a new thought that could help me feel differently about this situation and maybe cause me to take action in a different way? And then we can use that to kind of move forward. Does that make sense to folks? Yeah, Linda. Oh, such a great point. How, you know, if you're older, that when you were growing up, you weren't allowed to have emotions. Yeah, I'm Asian. And, you know, like, we weren't really allowed to express a lot of emotions in our house. My dad was like, children should be seen and not heard. So any of our emotions were not validated or acknowledged really in our house. Exactly. Yeah. And, you know, it takes practice to bring out our emotions, right? And sometimes we could just do it for ourselves, right? We could just journal it ourselves. And then other times we can call a friend, we can share it with a partner, we can share it with a family member, et cetera. So, right, think about like how, you know, what is your network? What is the approach you're going to take this into action? Is it going to be something you write down? And, you know, I can use the word journal, but honestly, for me, journaling kind of freaks me out. So I don't want to force anyone to be journaling. And if you journal, that's awesome. But if you don't, it's okay. You don't have to journal. Just write it down, because honestly, putting it on paper makes it real and makes you go, oh, do I really want to have that emotion? Do I really want to have that action? And then you can start to move forward. So awesome. Okay. All right. So the next tip I want to share with you is to understand your buttons. So buttons are things on ourselves, in ourselves, that get pushed when something happens, okay? And when you feel a strong emotional reaction, it's likely that one of your buttons has been pushed. I have some serious buttons in my parenting experiences. I only have one kid, and honestly, that's all I can handle. And, you know, I often have to deeply examine what is going on inside of me. What is this button in me about? And why am I reacting this way to something my daughter is doing? So it works either way, right? Because I might have a joyous emotion. So an example is when my daughter is being helpful without being asked. Like she just sets the table and I'm like, whoa, who is this child? Where did she come from? And she sets the table and she's being really helpful. And I'm so happy because I didn't have to ask her or beg her to help. And then sometimes I get this sad anger emotion when, you know, she didn't put her shoes away after I asked her 3 times and then I tripped on them and I'm like, rawr, right? I'm angry. And so I have to think about what's behind the reaction. And, you know, when I was experiencing that joy, I realized like, I want her to be a helpful, considerate human. And she just demonstrated it. Hooray, right? And then on the flip side, I wanted her to do what I tell her the first time. And she didn't do it. And rawr, I'm angry. And now I stubbed my toe, you know, on the shoes. So often when we have a strong emotional reaction to something, a value of ours has been violated. So deep down in there, we have a personal value that has been violated or we feel it's being trampled on a little bit or a lot. And the better you understand your values, the better you're going to be able to understand your emotions about this. So does that make sense? People see those values underneath those strong emotional reactions. Emotions and weakness. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Getting a little bit of nods there. Good, good, good. Okay. And then finally, the last tip in this is about looking for the ripple effect. So in yourself and others. So the next time you're experiencing emotion, try to understand that thought that's creating the emotion and what that thought and emotion are causing you to do. And try to observe that in others, right? So it's so much easier to watch this in other people. You can watch it on TV, you can see it in your kids, you can see it in your partner, you can see it in your friends, right? We can see this in other people. You know, I watch my daughter a lot because I think I'm emotionally intelligent compared to her, which I don't, you know, whatever. I probably have a lot of growth to do, but she's 8. So, you know, she's working on it, right? And they're teaching a lot of this in schools, which is so fabulous. But I watch her have a reaction and then it causes her to do something. And then, you know, there's a thought associated with it. And I try to interrupt that pattern that's going on in her mind and in her heart and in her hands, right? And so when I try to interrupt it by asking, tell me about your feelings, tell me about your thoughts, tell me what's going on, right? And help her articulate it and see kind of how might we shift it with a different approach. So it's really fun homework to do when you're watching TV, when you're, you know, hanging out with some other people, to watch and observe and start becoming like a little anthropologist, the cultural anthropologist in the world. Okay. And becoming aware of your emotions puts you in charge, okay? So the whole takeaway here is when you're aware of the emotion that you're feeling, you can then choose a new thought to create a new emotion, and that will lead typically to a new outcome. So let me pause here briefly for some questions on emotional self-awareness. Krista's got a question here about how does that relate to yourself as you get upset at yourself about something? So that's such a great question. So I'm upset at myself for procrastinating on a project. Okay. So, you know, I'm upset, I'm angry, I'm disappointed. If we go back to that feelings wheel, right? Let's say I'm feeling angry, upset, maybe provoked, annoyed, right? And or maybe even there's some embarrassment because I'm procrastinating. So how does that relate to ourselves? And so typically what's happening is we have judgment for ourselves, for our feelings. And if we let go of the judgment and we just kind of let ourselves feel and go, okay, well, yeah, I'm procrastinating because I feel like I'm not going to be successful here, to go back to that example with my client. Well, what's another thought I could have? Like, really, how true is that? Someone had put in the chat, like, I question myself when I think these kinds of negative self-talk thoughts. I go, really, how true is that? Or, come on, that can't be really that true. And so that helps us shift our thinking and then our emotions and then our actions. So Krista, I hope that's helpful. The feeling that I could have avoided the situation. Yeah. that can happen too. So, you know, I think there's a lot of acceptance that we, especially when we think about ourselves, accepting like, yeah, I'm angry, and yeah, it's okay to be angry because things are disrupted or because XYZ happened. So exactly. Yep. Elizabeth says there's a need behind that feeling. Exactly. Yep. I agree with that. And that could be in a value, or it could just be a need, an emotional need that we all have, or a social need that we all have. Exactly. Just reading about that today. I find that article. Okay. Awesome. So let's go back here. And so emotional self-awareness. Is everyone kind of feeling pretty good? Let's just get a little type in the chat there if you're feeling pretty good about this. You've got something you can take away and apply today. Give me a yes if you've got it. Woohoo! Yay! Loving this. Okay, good, good, good. Okay, we've got about 15 minutes left, a little bit less than that. So I want to dive into assertiveness, okay? So the assertiveness is in the self-management, okay? And there's two components to assertiveness. The first is about expressing your thoughts, beliefs, and emotions. And the second part of doing it is doing it in a socially acceptable way, right? So when I look at the emotional intelligence assessment, the EQI 2.0 that I'm familiar with, some of the questions we ask the people who take the assessment, well, the questions we ask the people who take it are, I say no when I need to. I'm assertive without being offensive. I stand up for what I believe in. I am firm and direct when necessary, right? So this is what assertiveness is about. It's expressing your thoughts and doing it in a socially acceptable way. Yeah, okay. So here we go with a poll, our last poll for today. Dive in, tell me what your assertiveness growth opportunity is. Is it about communicating your feelings, beliefs, and thoughts openly? Like maybe you're one of those people who holds back and it's like, oh, I'm not gonna say anything. I don't wanna rock the boat, or I'm just gonna hold back. Or maybe it's like, I don't always do it in the most socially acceptable manner. You know, that's not offensive, right? So, and you can choose both if that's for you. Awesome. I may have picked both. I love the honesty. Yep. Both. Yeah. Yeah. A and B. Wonderful. Okay. So assertiveness. Can you close up that poll? Ashley, I just move along here. Let's see. Yes, it's split. I get it. I get it. So, okay. So, it's very easy to see the harm done when we observe people expressing their thoughts, beliefs in a socially unacceptable way. So maybe it's a grumpy coworker, an explosive leader, or maybe a temperamental admin that we work with. The harm is, you know, like what's the harm when we deal with those people? We're walking on an edge.
All right. Woohoo. Am I back? Okay. All right. That's crazy. My phone dropped. Okay. So hopefully you guys can hear me. Just tell me if it's horrible and we'll fix it. So thank you so much for the quick feedback there. Okay. So it's pretty easy to harm done when we have someone who's not expressing their thoughts, beliefs in a socially acceptable way, right? Grumpy coworker, explosive leader, temperamental admin. We walk on eggshells. We try to avoid contact with these people, and then we don't feel safe or comfortable collaborating with them. But my question for you is for the harm that's done when we don't have employees or colleagues or students expressing their feelings, beliefs, and thoughts. So it's someone who's holding back. What's the harm in that? Type that in the chat. Built up emotions, yes, stunts growth, safety, can create feelings of resentment, loss of enrichment, no change. You aren't able to help them. Poor customer service, loss of feelings, don't feel safe, truth is not revealed, don't know what's wrong or how to fix. Yes, attrition, poor work environment, anger, yep. How to be assertive without being yeah. All right, exactly. So this to me, like honestly, people holding back or leaders or others not creating an environment where people can speak up is so critical to me, right? And the reason it's really important to me is because when we don't express our thoughts and feelings, we aren't contributing our brilliance to the situation at hand. So let's say our coworker is working on a project and they're going to roll it out to the entire school, and we have some serious concerns about it and we're like, oh, I don't know if that's going to fly. If we hold back and we don't share that with our coworker, we end up not contributing our brilliance to the project, right? And so what happens? Our coworker goes out there, and of course they get some of that feedback, because like our feelings are pretty much the same as someone else in the universe. And then they end up getting it kind of when it's too late to do something about it, or it's kind of far down the rollout. And like, that's horrible, right? So I feel so strongly about this aspect of assertiveness, because we don't express our thoughts and beliefs. We miss the value of diversity in organizations, right? You know, we're talking a lot about diversity now, and it's all about having different types of people from different walks of life come together and be brilliant and, you know, work together and create brilliant decisions. If they're not speaking up, if they're not feeling comfortable to speak up, if they're not, you know, with leaders who ask them to speak up and notice when they're not speaking up, we're not taking advantage of the diversity we have. Like, it's like those people don't even need to be there. They're not really contributing, because we're not getting their brilliance on the table. So if you're in a position to lead, if you're in a position that's customer facing, think about how you create opportunity for people to speak up and give feedback, because if you do that more, you will likely create a better output for those people. So that's kind of one of the takeaways here. Okay, so here's some application. And any of you, I hope some of you are familiar with this book, Crucial Conversations. Love it, love it, love it. So my book is actually kind of old. I noticed it says 2 million copies, and the image I pulled off of that big bookseller online has 4 million copies. Yes. And fabulous book. There's some tools in this book that I want to talk to you about today. And if you are into reading or into listening, go find some content on Crucial Conversations. Or if you had the opportunity to take the class, go for it, because it is so worth it. Okay. So the first tool I want to share with you is starting with the heart. So ask yourself what you really, really, really want for yourself and the relationship and the other person when you're dealing with a situation. You know, and when we really, really, really think about that, with all of the people and the whole situation concerned, our answer is often, well, I want my way, but I also want the other person to feel this, or I want them to feel good about it, or I want them to participate, right? So, you know, sometimes we're trying to get people to do something, and then we're like, but I want you to do it with enthusiasm. So if we think about what we really, really want for ourselves, others, and the whole relationship, then the question is, how would I behave if I really wanted these results? I might not be so ram charging in that situation. I might not be so directive. I might be more about creating dialogue if I really wanted the person to show up with enthusiasm for the activity versus just directing them, right? So start with the heart. Really, really focus on kind of what you want for everyone and everything in the situation. And then as you do that, avoid the fool's choice. Okay. And the fool's choice, oh my God, so brilliant. I love this book. Is about choosing between getting results, like the action you want done, and keeping a relationship. And the fool's choice is thinking you only get one of those. Okay. So the way to do this is identify what you want and what you don't want, and then create an and statement that challenges your brain to look for creative and productive options instead of silence and violence, which we'll get into later. So you take what you want, you take what you don't want, and you make an and statement. So let me give you some examples. How can I have a candid conversation with my partner about household, parenting, and schooling responsibilities and not create bad feelings or waste our time? Like, oh, I've been there before. My husband never makes dinner, blah, 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 you know, all the other things, right? So how can I have this conversation and not waste our time? How can I give feedback to my employee without him feeling negatively towards me? How can I talk to my colleague about their report without having them get defensive about their work? So when you put those things together and you create this and statement and you write it down, this is like so powerful, because then your brain is looking at this piece of paper going, oh, okay, well, here are the things I need to do. And you quickly can come to some answers of how to do it. You do it with tact, you do it with, you know, maybe some choice of words, maybe you do it with kind of shared understanding of what you both care about, right? There's so much there of what you can do. So love it, love it, love it. Okay, the chat is lighting up. This is looking good. Wonderful. People love Crucial Conversations. They're using it with a neighbor. Oh my gosh, yeah. Our community, we need so much of this. So great. Okay, so I've got a little bit of homework for you too. in crucial conversations. And understanding your style under stress. That might be feedback from me, Ashley. Apologize. And this is an assessment from Vital Smarts, and you can take it for free. It's a free quiz. I'll put the link in the document you're going to get with the key points from this presentation. You can understand your style under stress. And is your style to go to silence, where when you're under stress, you retreat, you pull back, you avoid, you withdraw, you mask? Or is your style to go to violence, where you start controlling, labeling, and attacking? And then once you do this assessment, you'll get some tips on skills to practice in your communication model. It's mind-blowing. I love it. I hope you'll find it really valuable too. Okay, so that's kind of where we are. I think we've got time for a question or two. Ashley, question or two.
There was a question earlier Nick brought up. And it's about, however, why should we suffer from others' anger because they cannot control their feelings? There's a difference between acknowledging our own feelings versus controlling them. Is it okay to be verbally abusive to others because you cannot control your anger?
I don't think it's ever okay to be verbally abusive to others, right? Like, we all need to have a little bit more compassion for everyone, right? So the challenge might be in how to diffuse the situation, how to take someone and go, hey, like, I hear a lot of anger in what you're saying. In fact, I do this with my 8-year-old a lot. Like, she's yelling at me. Obviously, she's angry. And I say, you know, I hear a lot of anger in what you're saying. It sounds like you're really angry. What are you angry about? You know, and then I kind of diffuse it, right? And I use a calm tone. And I bring their attention to it too, because people don't always know they're yelling, and they don't always know because their emotions are running, their blood's pumping into their ears, right? So hopefully that helps with kind of how to handle it. Yeah, de-escalation. Doug is saying de-escalation is a complicated process. Yes, I agree. I don't have any tips on that, but if someone does, you know, dump a link in the chat. That would be awesome. Use of I statements. That'd be great too. Good. Like, I feel this when you're yelling at me, right? It's easy to say, but not easy to do when a leader unleashes on you. Yeah. You know what I think though, is that acknowledgement, right? So if we go back to what Brene Brown says about acknowledging people's feelings, you know, even if it's a leader, to say, wow, you sound really upset. You know, to just say that. And then they're like, yeah, I am upset, right? Because when you say that to someone, they then check themselves. Oh, am I feeling that way? No, I'm not. I'm feeling X, right? And they'll tell you what they're really feeling. And to just say, okay, yeah, you know, you're yelling, you sound really upset, you know, just to state the facts and not get to, not to start pointing or to kind of attack them for being attacking. It's kind of nice when we can diffuse the situation. SBI model from CCL. Okay. Woo, Ashley, I got more to learn. Thank you. Perfect. Okay. Another question. Anyone got another question? I feel empathy is either present in yourself or not. It's hard to grow. Oh, I think it's growable. So maybe Ashley will go there for our next session. So any other questions we've got, folks? It's growable. It does take work, but it's growable. Tone of voice is huge. Yes. Yeah, check your tone. Yep.
Do you have any recommendations on tone?
On tone? You know, we often talk about like the impact and intent model. So here's my intent, and, you know, here's what our impact is. And we have to be really aware of our intent and our impact. And so sometimes our tone might not be helpful. And I guess, are we talking about my tone or someone else's tone? Like, what's the tone question about?
It looks like to be a lot of your own personal tone, especially now that we're in this virtual world.
Yeah. Gosh, that's really hard. I think it's about trying to make sure we're coming from as positive of a place as we can, you know. And when I think about myself, like, you know, before we started today, I was listening to some pump you up music, right? I was like, okay, I want to get in a happy tone. I want to be in a good place. And, you know, to be honest, as my daughter was walking out the door with my husband, she's yelling at me about some crap, right? Like, I didn't put her shoes in the right place or something, right? I'm like, okay, I can't hold on to that. I've got to let it go. I've got to move on, and I got to get in the right place for my audience that's showing up. So I think doing what we can to help ourselves be in a really positive place is helpful. And then the other thing I think, and the ways to do that is like, one, acknowledge where you are, and then just kind of go, okay, I'm totally here, accept it, and then kind of shift. And then the other thing is to be explicit about our intent. And so, if we're sharing feedback with someone, maybe we say like, I don't want to seem really criticizing your work. I just have some feedback that I want to share with you, and I think you might get this feedback later. So I just want to share it to be helpful to you, right? And to help you make a great product. And so when we share our intent, usually that helps us with the impact, especially if we have an unintended impact. Those are my thoughts on that. Oof, that's a tough one. Does anyone else have any other thoughts they could drop in the chat that they want to share? Because I don't know, I don't feel I'm a 100% expert in that space.
And Jahnavi, we had a question about what do you do in situations where emotions are overshared and affect the office environment negatively?
Yeah. So I'm going to take this as being a colleague who, like, I've got a colleague who's oversharing, or I've got a team member on my team who's oversharing, and it's kind of bringing people down. Is that kind of the direction?
Looks like yes.
Okay. All right. So, I probably would chat with that person one-on-one, and I would probably, use a feedback model where I'm really thinking about, and it's interesting because I just delivered a workshop on giving feedback and 5 critical steps of how to give feedback. And you have to think about, what's the purpose of my feedback? How is it going to support the person and the relationship and the outcome, right? The behavior change. So I think through kind of what's in it for this person to hear this feedback, because they probably have a lot of emotions, and that's why they're spilling, right? That's why they're spilling. So if we just tell them to shut it and put a tighter lid on it, that's not very helpful. So what we might want to do is think through, like, what is the impact for this person if they showed up differently or showed up in a different way? And maybe there's some support that they need that's beyond what the group can provide, that they aren't aware of or aren't able to tap into. And so I'd really think carefully about what are some other resources I might be able to involve, to call on, or to bring up in that conversation. That's what I'm thinking on that one.
And then one last one that has a couple people very interested is, what would be some suggestions you might have how to stay positive in a toxic work environment?
So if I were in a toxic work environment, I would try to figure out what is making it toxic first, right? So get to the root cause of the situation. Is it a person? Is it a sentiment? Is it a pressure? What is it that is making it toxic? And then try to fix that if I can, right? So, because just trying to be positive is like putting, lipstick on a pig, right? I don't really understand the full meaning behind that phrase, but just trying to do that is difficult to do, and it really doesn't solve the problem. And honestly, if you're feeling it's toxic, some other people are probably feeling it's toxic. So go to the leader and say, hey, I have some concerns about our work environment. I probably wouldn't use the word toxic, because those are all really, they make bells of alarms go off in people's bodies, right? So just say, I have some concerns about our work environment. Like, it seems pretty negative. It seems like people are challenged. It seems like people aren't connecting. What are the things that are making it toxic? Or it seems like Bobby is always really negative about everything, and it's affecting me. Like, how do you feel about it, right? And then create some dialogue about that, and then brainstorm some solutions. So let's say you tried that, because I think we're going to assume you tried that. So then what do? I think it's a lot about not taking it personally, right? So you've got to have some detachment, some emotional detachment from the situation, and to think about how you're showing up and how you're contributing to the environment. And, if you can address it directly with that one person who's creating a toxic environment, awesome, use the same skills. And then if you can't, then kind of rely on some detachment to separate you. Which, I don't look at the news every day, because I need some detachment from what's going on. I preserve myself emotionally by drawing some boundaries. And so, that is a really useful strategy. but I wouldn't recommend it as the first one. Okay, awesome. Thank you guys. I know we're over time, so thank you all for joining. Yeah, appreciate it. This is so good. Yay, yay. Okay, any other questions in the chat, or anyone want to stay on and ask a question live? I've got some time, so it's all yours.
Yeah, and we'll get recordings sent out to everybody. We'll get those resources out to you.
In the next day or so, probably.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for bearing with me with the audio too. I appreciate your patience on that and your quick feedback. And I loved all your participation. So thank you. Thank you. Yay.
Jan, you should have access to all of them, but I'll check and reach out to you.
Great. Okay. Ooh, autistics control emotion.
People were asking what's the link for the homework.
We don't have a link for homework. I'm going to send a document to Ashley, and then she's going to share it with all of you. So the document will have kind of all the resources, links to the things I talked about, etc. So great. Yay, you learned something new. Woohoo. Got something new, got a little bit of work to do. Love it.
And it might be interesting too, and I don't know if you have them offhand, but something that we could look into is some resources for autistic people to control emotions. For those on the scale.
Yeah, I don't have anything offhand. You know, what's coming to mind is what they're teaching, you know, my daughter in third grade, but I don't know if that's appropriate. So, you know, I would actually go to a professional on that one. I could do a little Google search, but you know, I'm a Googler just like anyone else, but I think I would go to a professional on that one. How to not take it personally. Okay. I think the 4 Agreements actually is a really good resource for that. If anyone's read that and wants to confirm, I'm trying to see if I have the book handy.
Yeah, and Tasha, Pam suggests checking with your disability or accessibility office on your campus. They usually have some of these resources.
Great, awesome. Cool. Yeah, Rose is saying the 4 Agreements is helpful and can be integrated with EI. Cool, yay, I love all the participation, and thank you to the community, right? Because you're helping each other out, you're answering questions for me, which I so appreciate. We, as a collective, have more knowledge than any one of us individually, so that's so beautiful to see.
Yeah, and it's great hearing all the different perspectives and things that they tie into it, so that's awesome.
Yeah.
Great, thank you everybody. And like we said, if there's anyone else who maybe has a last question, or you'll have access to email me or Jahnavi and all that. So if you have any additional questions that maybe you don't feel comfortable in this format, please reach out.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see you in November.